Few structures in history have generated as much fascination and as many wild theories as the pyramids of Egypt. And for centuries, many people have asked themselves the same question. How could they build something so perfect, so colossal, more than 4,500 years ago? One of the most famous and absurd theories is that of extraterrestrials. According to this idea, the Egyptians could not have built the pyramids alone. Why? Because the blocks were too large, the alignments too precise, and because, of course, the aliens needed a landing strip. Yes, according to some alternative experts, the pyramids were cosmic antennas, interdimensional power plants, or monuments of alien contact. The curious thing is that this theory has appeared in documentaries, books, and even memes, even though it has no archaeological basis. Then there are those who speak of Atlantis, an ultra-advanced civilization, now extinct, that supposedly left its knowledge in Egypt before disappearing under the sea. According to this idea, the Egyptians didn't design anything, they simply inherited the plans from a superior race. Interesting, but without proof. There are also theories that claim the pyramids were built by time travelers, or that they contain secret messages from civilizations before the Great Flood, or even that the Sphinx is older than the pyramids and was made by a forgotten race with almost magical powers. Because pyramids don't just impress, they defy modern logic. They are so old, so precise, and so imposing, that many people prefer to think that someone else must have helped. Admitting that they were built by humans over 4,000 years ago with simple tools. It's harder to believe than a UFO. But the truth is that there is no real evidence of aliens, Atlanteans, or lost technology. What there is, however, is a lot of imagination and proven theories, and a good publishing business. For a long time, we were led to believe that the pyramids were built by oppressed slaves, scourged by the sun by tyrannical pharaohs. But thanks to modern archaeological discoveries, we know that this image is as false as it is dramatic. The reality is much more interesting. The pyramids were built by thousands of highly organized workers, well-fed, trained, and, in many cases, even with benefits worthy of a state worker. In the 1990s, archaeologists found complete villages near the pyramids at Giza, with dwellings, kitchens, bakeries, tools, and even cemeteries where some of the builders were buried. The most surprising thing, these burials were not of anonymous slaves, but of respected workers. They had their own graves, offerings, and were buried near the structures they helped build, something unthinkable if they were mere disposable slaves. In addition, inscriptions have been found inside the blocks and passageways of the pyramids with names such as the King's Beer Drinkers or Menkaur's Gang. These marks weren't scribbles, they were the names of work teams, like modern construction crews. And the best part? They had a sense of humor. The Egyptians were masters of logistical organization. It is estimated that some 20,000 to 30,000 people worked on the Great Pyramid, divided into rotating shifts, with specialists in stonemasonry, transportation, supervision, cooking, medicine, and administration. And although the conditions were undoubtedly harsh, it was neither easy nor comfortable work. These workers were not chained slaves. They were citizens, peasants, or artisans who worked for the Egyptian state, in a system that combined civic duty, temporary employment, and prestige. Many of them returned to their villages after each work season. And yes, they received food, beer, clothing, and lodging as compensation. Basically, they were workers for the pharaoh. Part of a national project that represented not only power, but connection with the gods. So no, the pyramids weren't made by whipping. They were built by real people, with names, skills, and motivation, who left their mark not only in stone, but in history. Many wonder how the Egyptians managed to lift stone blocks weighing several tons without cranes, modern machinery, or advanced technology. And that's where the theories about aliens and magic arise. But the truth is, they didn't need science fiction, they had something much more powerful: human ingenuity and collective organization. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is made up of more than 2 million stone blocks, some weighing up to 15 tons. How did they cut, transport, and place them so precisely? Let's start with the tools. Although they lacked iron, the Egyptians used tools made of hardened copper, stone, and abrasive sand to cut limestone. For the harder granite, they probably used dolerite hammers, an extremely resistant rock, along with percussion and abrasion techniques. But the most fascinating thing is how they transported the blocks. A theory supported by recent findings suggests that they dragged the blocks on wooden sleds, moistening the sand in front to reduce friction. This has been proven in modern experiments. Simply wet the sand properly, and the effort required is reduced by up to 50%. They also used ramps, probably a combination of straight, spiral, or zigzag ramps, made of adobe, stone, and gravel. These ramps were used to raise the blocks to different heights during the construction process. Another key was mathematical precision. The Egyptians mastered geometry, the use of water levels, and astronomical alignment tools. The Great Pyramid, for example, is aligned with millimetric precision with respect to the cardinal points, and without a compass. They did not build the pyramid in one piece, but in layers. Each level was completed before continuing to the next. It was a gradual, laborious, and perfectly coordinated process. And although they had no computers, no electricity, no motors, the Egyptians knew how to take advantage of what they did have. Simple resources, collective work, and a social system focused on achieving the impossible. The pyramids of Egypt may seem imposing, eternal, and unfathomably precise, but the reality is that they were not perfect. And that is, perhaps, one of the most fascinating things about the whole mystery. Even the greatest monuments of humanity are full of mistakes, adjustments, and improvisations. Let's start with one of the most curious, the bent pyramid of Snefru. This pyramid, built before those at Giza, begins with a very steep angle, but halfway through construction, the architects drastically changed the slope. The reason? They probably realized that if they continued at that angle, the pyramid would collapse under its own weight. The result is a bent pyramid shape, a sort of hybrid of two designs. A mistake? Yes. An equally impressive architectural marvel? Also. Then we have incomplete or abandoned pyramids. In some cases, the pharaoh died before the construction was completed and his successor decided to leave it as it was or modify it. Other times, they simply made calculation errors or the foundations failed, forcing the work to be halted. In the case of the Red Pyramid, also by Snefru, the builders learned from previous mistakes and opted for a lower, more stable angle. In fact, we could say that the history of the pyramids is also a history of trial and error, a large-scale learning process, passed down from generation to generation. Even in the pyramids of Giza, which are often regarded as masterpieces, small deviations have been detected, such as misaligned blocks or areas corrected during construction. Some cameras were half-sealed, and others appear to have been adjusted on the fly. There were also fatal accidents. Skeletons of workers have been found nearby with signs of serious injuries, indicating that the process was not entirely clean or risk-free. We've all heard that the pyramids were tombs, and yes, that part is true. But if you think they were giant cemeteries with no real purpose, you're missing the point. The pyramids were much more than that. They were symbols of power, divine propaganda, and state projects. At the heart of each pyramid was the body of a pharaoh. But it wasn't just about burying him, it was a transformation ritual, a sacred act for the dead king to become a god. The pyramidal shape represented a solid sunbeam, a stairway to heaven. And the goal was clear: to allow the pharaoh's spirit to ascend to Ra, the sun god, and from there reign for all eternity. The pyramid was, then, a spiritual machine. Every angle, every passage, and every chamber had a ritual purpose. And beyond its religious function, it was a message engraved in stone. This is the king. This is his power. This is his eternity. But there was also a political function. Building a pyramid was an act of mass propaganda. It brought together thousands of workers, artisans, and supervisors under a single project. It demonstrated the state's ability to organize resources on a large scale. And he reminded all of Egypt and its enemies that the pharaoh was a superior being, with power even over death. In addition, the pyramids were surrounded by temples, chapels, and cities for the priests, who were in charge of the daily rituals of the cult of the deceased pharaoh. The entire funerary complex became a religious, political, and economic center that remained active long after the king's death.